and I've never had this experience, and I couldn't understand what these dogs were experiencing and what their humans were experiencing, right? And finally, there I was in a position to actually understand it firsthand. Oh my God, And so my thoughts continued. It's like dogs, frantic and desperate. Why? For what? Right? And it just came to me. Boom, a download. There it was. Dogs are desperate for leadership, loving leadership, not the alpha domineering kind. And responsibility, which will let them have more freedom. And they're desperate for clarity, to know without a doubt what rules we're playing by, what the boundaries really are. And they want to be listened to. They're desperate to be understood in a deep way. And they want to dialogue and to communicate and to collaborate, to be a partner with a partner, to be loved, not for what they can do, but for who they are, a perfect being full of heart and soul. Hi, I'm Kathy Kowalik, and I believe that our dogs connect us to the heart and soul of what really matters in life. So hang out, and we'll take a deep dive into the human-dog connection and explore strategies that will inspire you to create legendary, enlightened partnership with your dog. This is the Enlightened By Dogs podcast. Well, hey, Kathy here, your host of the Enlightened by Dogs show. And it's sometimes life gets really interesting, right? I mean, even though I've helped, thousands of devoted dog parents get more trust and confidence with their dogs so they can have an amazing partnership lifestyle and do the things they want to do. It was not always that way for me. I have had my share of struggles and heartaches and all the things, right? I am most definitely not immune. So I'm going to talk to you today about hard lessons from a heart dog. And I think it's going to be really helpful. It'll kind of give you some of the backstory. Some of you that have been around and listening and following me for a while have already heard the story. You know the story. Many of you are newer and have not. So thanks for listening again to the story. You've heard it in the past. And those of you that are new and have not, well, buckle up, Buttercup, because I am going to be vulnerable here and share kind of the, the story of how we got to be where we are and why this podcast is even in existence. So it's going to be good. But before we do that, I wanted to take a quick pause and give a big shout out to one of our amazing and awesome listeners who left a 5-star rating and review. So this is from RLH543, who writes, "Brilliant advice. Kathy breaks down the old system for dog and puppy training and discusses how bad these techniques were for our dogs. She provides humane ways to bring out the best in our dogs. Respecting your dog's feelings and personality develops a lasting bond." Well, thank you so much, RLH543, for stopping by, for listening, for taking the time to write a rating review. I love you for that, and I really appreciate you doing that. So, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so shall we dive in? Shall we dive into, me when it wasn't always rainbows and unicorns and a lot of fun, right? So as a matter of fact, I was ready to give up on almost all my dreams, like my herding dreams, my I say dog, cross that out, put in human training business, and maybe even my little sheep farm. Like it was just a really low point in my life, and I felt ready to give up. And I found myself on the ground under a tree in my pasture, sobbing and clutching my beautiful border collie close to me in in that state of despair, really. And so there I was clutching her, and thinking about her and how we got to this place where I was on the ground, holding her and sobbing. I mean, she was so smart and clever. She learned everything I could throw at her. I mean, all the sit down, stay, she knew a couple of dozen cued tricks. She was clever enough to open doors and gate latches to get where she wanted to go, which was always wherever I was. And, she was so athletic, she could leap 5 feet up straight in the air over my head from a standstill. Yeah. So she was amazing, really. And I had really high expectations. And when it came time for her training to begin, meaning her sheepdog herding training, it went south really fast. And, here I was, an experienced trainer, and I could not get my well-bred, talented, and very clever young dog to do the most basic of herding things, which she should actually want to do, which was stopping at balance. Not that you need to know the details of it, but it just seemed to me, it seemed so basic and so ordinary, and it was crazy. Like, I would ask her to stop where she should want to, and instead of, she was in the right place at the right time and everything was like perfectly aligned, but instead of actually stopping or pausing, I felt she was ready to add a pause at the point of balance, right? And instead of doing that, she would just explode in like this frustrated frenzy, like she was reacting to not understanding what she was supposed to do or why I was asking her to do it. And it just didn't make sense to me. It was a real head scratcher. I just did not get it at all. And I would get so mad at her sometimes. And I would get mad at myself for getting mad. And I was driving myself crazy, trying to do like all the right things, being more clear, doing more obedience training, exercising her more before we started work, like to settle her down a little bit. And like, I like to joke, it's like, it's really bad when even your inner voice starts to talk trash to you. But I mean, like, seriously, I was seriously doubting myself at that point. I mean, I just never imagined in a million years that I would end up here with this dog. I was starting to feel like a failure, and I had reached out for advice from a couple of big head experts over the ensuing months. And basically I got stuff like, she's just not listening, she's out of control, she's impossible to train, so, punish her, correct her, hit her, all those kind of things. And in the end, it basically came down to, just give up on her, find her a pet home, and get yourself a good herding dog. And so that was the, quote unquote expert advice, which of course I rejected because that is not who I am. And so I felt really alone, like just me and my difficult young dog left to figure it out on her own. And there I was, that day, in a heap under a tree, an emotional hot mess, sobbing into my dog's neck at what I had just done. And like, oh my God, what had I just done? mean, I really had the whole training session planned out. I knew exactly what to do. I had planned to stay calm, how I was going to stay calm, how I was going to be the kind teacher that would help my puppy, my young dog learn this crucial lesson. And then it kind of went to, hell in a handbag really, really fast. It didn't work at all. And so I just tried louder, harder, firmer, to get her to listen and to do what I said, because it seemed so basic and so simple to me. Right. And at the same time, I was trying harder. So was she. Right. So she was trying harder, and firmer and louder to get what she wanted. And, it just wasn't computing, because I thought we should want the same thing. Right. And it just wasn't working. So in the meantime, that day, the sheep were running right at me, full blast, with my young pup behind, chasing them at me. Right. And so, I'm trying hard to get her to stop or whatever. And at the last second, I just desperately lurched off to the side to avoid getting run over by the sheep. And I just kind of lost it. I just was mad, I was scared because I could have gotten really seriously hurt. And I was just angry that she, wasn't listening. And, I was really trying all the things to get her to settle at balance. And instead, she just sped up and rushed the sheep into me. Right. And so I kind of ran at her. I was mad, and I chased her back off the sheep. And I really had lost sight of what I was after, and so I was feeling, bruised and sorry for myself, heartbroken. And it was tempting to just throw in the towel. I don't know if you have ever felt that way, but that's how I felt that day. It's like, oh my gosh, I just can't do anything with this dog. And everyone else is telling me that, I should just give up on her. And I started thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I should just give up, give up on her, give up on my dreams, just give up on everything. Because if I can't do that, if I can't work with this young dog, this puppy that should be easily workable with, well, then who the heck am I, and what am I doing, and who am I to teach anyone else how to do anything? Right. If you've probably been there, or at least you can imagine. Right. And so, I was embarrassed and I felt ashamed, at how I was behaving. And as I was in that moment, I didn't really know, at the time, that I was feeling so bad that I was about to have an aha moment that would end up changing everything. And so I sat there that day for a long while under the tree with Phoenix, and then I sort of had an epiphany, or an insight, or you just get that sudden flash of download. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but that's how it was for me. And I just started getting this insight after insight. And the first thing I thought of was oh my gosh, she reminds me of Helen Keller in that old movie I saw as a kid. You probably know the story of Helen Keller, where, she couldn't communicate. She was so frustrated that she would race around the dinner table, throwing plates and throwing food and glasses. And she was so angry and so frustrated in her failed attempts to be understood that, it was, and, no one knew what to do. Right. And it was almost like that's what my young dog was doing. And I'm like, but why, And at the same time, I was thinking, it's a similar story to the one that I see repeated over and over with my students and clients. My thoughts just started rolling along that train of thought. The dog seemed desperate and frantic. Right. And I've never had this experience, and I couldn't understand what these dogs were experiencing and what their humans were experiencing. Right. And finally, there I was in a position to actually understand it firsthand. Oh my God, And so my thoughts continued. It's like dogs, frantic and desperate. Why? For what? Right? And it just came to me. Boom, a download. There it was. Dogs are desperate for leadership, loving leadership, not the alpha domineering kind. And responsibility, which will let them have more freedom. And they're desperate for clarity, to know without a doubt what rules we're playing by, what the boundaries really are. And they want to be listened to. They're desperate to be understood in a deep way. And they want to dialogue and to communicate and to collaborate, to be a partner with a partner, to be loved, not for what they can do, but for who they are, a perfect being full of heart and soul. And so I was flooded with insight after insight after insight. And I realized that some of these things were the very things that were missing with Phoenix and me. Like, but why? Why? Like, why was it so different with her than it was with my other dogs, right? I mean, I was so close with her. She was so smart and well trained, right? She was very obedient. And yet, and then bam, that next piece hit me like a brick. With Phoenix, I had focused on being a masterful, positive trainer, not a loving, leading dance partner like I usually was. It was like a eureka moment for me right then and there. And as I had that, Phoenix came over to me, licking my tears in love and encouragement. And instead of giving up, I made a vow to her that I would figure out how to make it right with her. And not just her, she prodded. She wanted more. I just felt it. It was just, we were so connected in that moment. Like our hearts were just in dialogue, right? And she wanted me to go for more. And together we would figure out how to teach trusting partnership and how to be a loving leader in the dance of life to my students that so desperately wanted a real partnership with their dogs too. I mean, that's why they were coming to me in the first place, because I had that with my other dogs, right? And so it began. My dream became much more clear. I dreamt of a million dancing hearts of dog moms just like you and me, living a joy-filled partnership lifestyle with the dogs they love so much. And here's another insight that I had. I was moving into the 5th level of learning competency. I realized this. It was so cool. The learning theory where we start out having no awareness of, or even the existence of, a learning opportunity, right? So we refer to that as unconscious incompetence, right? So a person might not be aware that they have a deficiency in, or they deny the relevance of or usefulness of a new skill, right? And then from there, we move into conscious incompetence, where we are aware of the relevance of and the deficiency of the skill, our skill in this area. And so we begin learning or improving our skill. And that's where we're kind of beginners, right? And then we move into, because we achieve conscious competence. And so in that particular skill, and that's where we can reliably execute that skill at will, even though we still need to think about it because it's not second nature yet, right? And then the 4th level is referred to as unconscious competence, where the skill is so practiced that we don't need to think about it. It's like second nature, right? So examples are like driving, typing, communicating. Well, the 4th level is the most dangerous because it's where we can fall into complacency, we can actually start to lose our skill set and where we can stop reaching for more mastery because hello, we think we're already there and we don't really need to reach for more, right? And that makes sense. And so this lovely dog, this dog that was so hard for me, she's the one that gave me the motivation and the inspiration to step beyond my comfortable unconscious competency and move into the fifth dimension, which is enlightened competency. That's where I could dissect, explore, experiment with teaching partnership skills. And as I stepped through that door, I also became aware of the holes in my understanding. And with a beginner's mind, I stepped back into learning so that I could not only become masterful in an entirely new way, but so that I could teach those skills to others. So that was a turning point in my own life. And that was brought on by my heart dog, Phoenix. She helped me to articulate many of the lessons that I share, including the difference between being a positive trainer and being a loving, kind, benevolent leader that keeps my dog safe, calm, and happy. I learned the difference firsthand, up close and painfully because of my Phoenix. Now, remember that at the time, I was a well-respected positive trainer and holistic behavior consultant. I was booked out 3 to 4 weeks. I was getting referrals from vets who had clients and dogs whose behavior was quote unquote beyond fixing. I helped people who were referred by other positive trainers because they could not be helped. And in some cases, they did not know what to do with their own dogs, right? Much less their clients, right? And so the cool thing, I think, was, working with trainers and their own dogs who had reactivity and other challenges that were not resolved with skillful positive training. And so that was my life. I mean, that's where I was. And this is why I was fully immersed in this work of helping all the people and dogs that no one else could help, right? And then I had a subset, which were my herding students and clients. And so they would come to me and say, hey, this trainer wrecked my dog. My dog runs out in a panic out of the gate to get away from the pen, away from the trainer, or my dog shut down and won't work anymore. You know what I mean? So I hope that paints the picture, And so basically I was getting a lot of clients who no one else could help. And of course, a lot of referrals from those that I did help. So I was able to help so many that could go on to live a good life with their dogs and go on to do the things that they want to do. And Phoenix helped me to take what I knew, master it even more, and put it into a process to create the partnership principles, which I try to whittle down into the top 20%, Pareto principle, the top 20% of the things that I know beyond a doubt will work for everyone, no matter their background, no matter their dog's background, no matter the breed of dogs, no matter the activities they want to do, right? And so what are some of these core things that I learned from Phoenix, right? These are the things that have developed into my foundation formula and what has evolved into the Brilliant Partners Academy. So let me share a few of these core principles that I learned directly from Phoenix. Why it's so important to be a loving leader for your dog. That there's a crucial difference between teaching your dog to be obedient versus how to be responsible. That your emotions and your responses directly inform your dog and make the difference between frustration and joy. the critical importance of effective communication and how to use our 3 Ps to teach and to communicate with our dogs. I learned that this foundation needs to be established. This partnership foundation needs to be established before we ever start our specialty training, like herding, agility, obedience, rally, whatever, things that require special training skills. And I learned that loving leaders discover and inspire, are calm and focused, set effective boundaries, are visionary, lead by example, are excellent role models, motivate through inspiration, are trustworthy, and very importantly, keep us safe. And I want to share a quote. This is a meme that I made up and I share periodically, and I want to read this to you. Trust is awarded by our dogs to someone that they trust to keep them safe, that will give them good guidance, and who is calm and clear even in the most difficult circumstances. You could quote me on that one. Now, none of this would have happened if it wasn't for Phoenix. We made a pact that I would make this process of trust and understanding and living in partnership simple and easy and clear for people to follow, and that I would reach out as far and wide as I could. And so here we are, almost 20 years later on the podcast, on the Enlightened by Dogs podcast. Maybe I should have called it Enlightened by Phoenix podcast. And so it was a rising from the ashes story for me, right? So as it turned out, it was rather insightful, foresightful, interesting that I named my puppy Phoenix, not knowing what she would actually mean to me later in her life. And I'm so grateful that she has brought me on this amazing journey and that she's brought me here to you so that I can share this with you. Oh, and I almost forgot one little detail I wanted to share with you, which is fast forward a couple of years after the fateful, incident with Phoenix under the tree when I was about to give up, and I recommitted to her. Well, a couple years down the road and, working it out and training her and all that, I had an opportunity to go to a clinic with one of the, quote unquote, big hat trainers that had wrote her off and told me I should just absolutely give up on her, that it was never going to work. Well, I was at this clinic, and in one of the sessions, I brought her in to where I had, a couple other dogs I was working, but I brought her in to work in one of the sessions, and the trainer was like, "Oh my God, this is that dog." He was like, "Yeah, I cannot believe that you were able to achieve this level of work with her. This is amazing, and kudos to you." Because it was really good. I mean, by that time she was, trained up to the open level, doing, big outruns, and she was an awesome driver, and we were shedding. I mean, she was really going on well by that time. So I wanted to share that little bit of insight with you. And a few years ago, when Phoenix was about 16 and she left the earth plane, one of our Dancing Hearts partnership coaches, Marianne Megan, who's also an intuitive artist, painted a beautiful portrait of Phoenix for me. And while Marianne painted, she got a message from Phoenix in the form of a song. And so I wanted to share these words with you because they mean so much to me, and they represent my life's work so beautifully. And so from the song, "Walk Beside Me" by Celtic Woman. Don't walk in front of me. I was not born to follow. Don't walk behind me. We were all born to lead. Don't walk without me. I might need you tomorrow. Walk right beside me and be the real friend I need. Oh, all right. I'm going to leave you with that today, my friends. I know I went a little deep. I hope that was okay for you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment or get in touch, send a message. All right, my friends, have a most amazing week with your dogs. Be brilliant, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening. And hey, if you would like to work with me so that I can help you discover the missing pieces you need so that you and your dog can finally be happy and enjoy life together, then head on over to dancingheartsdogacademy.com and request your invitation to join us in the Brilliant Partners Academy when the doors open for the next enrollment. See you next time, and remember, a brilliant partnership with your dog makes your whole life brilliant.